Morning at the Parkers' house began as usual, with the smell of freshly brewed coffee and the ringing laughter of children. Nia Parker was busy in the kitchen, flipping perfect pancakes, while her husband Leonard read the morning paper at the dining table. Their home in the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio, was the embodiment of the American dream, a spacious two-story mansion with a manicured lawn and a white picket fence. At 36, Nia looked stunning. Her dark skin glowed with health, and her short dreadlocks, neatly styled into an elegant hairdo, accentuated her high cheekbones. She always paid attention to her appearance, even when doing household chores, a habit she had developed over the years. The neighbors considered Nia a model wife and mother who skillfully juggled her household duties and raising 3 children. "Kendra, hurry up, you'll be late for school," Nia called out to her eldest daughter, who had recently turned 16. "I'm coming, Mom," Kendra replied, running down the stairs with her backpack slung over her shoulder. At her age, she was a carbon copy of her mother, the same expressive eyes, the same proud posture. The 2 younger children, 11-year-old Jamal and 8-year-old Layla, were already sitting at the table, devouring pancakes with maple syrup. Leonard, dressed in an impeccable business suit, put down his newspaper and glanced at his watch. "I have to go. Today is a big day. A presentation for new investors," he said, getting up from the table and kissing Nia on the cheek. "Don't wait up for me for dinner, I'll probably be late." Nia smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Over the past 3 months, this phrase had become all too familiar. Working late had become the norm. Leonard was a financial advisor at the prestigious Brighton Investments and always worked long hours, but he used to make time for his family. Now evenings at home were a rarity. "Good luck with the presentation," she said, trying to make her voice sound natural. "Call me if your plans change." Leonard nodded, kissed the children, and left. Nia watched him through the window, a tall, handsome man in an expensive suit getting into his black Mercedes. At 40, Leonard looked stunning, athletic, with a short, stylish beard and a few strands of gray that only made him more attractive. He could still make her heart beat faster, even after 18 years of marriage. When the car disappeared around the corner, Nia felt her shoulders slump. The feigned cheerfulness slipped from her face like a mask. "Mom, are you okay?" Kendra's voice snapped her out of her reverie. "Of course, sweetie. Just thinking about my to-do list for today." Nia quickly forced a smile back on her face. "Come on, finish your breakfast, you'll be late." After the children left, Kendra in her first car, a 16th birthday present, and the younger ones on the school bus, the house fell silent. Nia methodically cleared the table, loaded the dishwasher, and went upstairs to freshen up before the parent committee meeting. In the bedroom, her gaze fell on her husband's nightstand. Nia usually respected his personal space, but today something compelled her. She opened the top drawer, neatly folded handkerchiefs, spare cufflinks, a few documents, and at the bottom, a receipt from the diamond jewelry store. The date was 2 weeks ago. The amount made her gasp, almost $3,000 for a sapphire ring. Nia slowly sank to the bed, clutching the receipt in her hands. The last gift she had received from Leonard was perfume for Valentine's Day. Cheap compared to this ring. Her birthday was last month. Leonard had given her a food processor, saying it was practical. Their wedding anniversary was only 3 months away. Who was the ring for? The question burned her all day as she mechanically went about her duties. The parent-teacher meeting, grocery shopping, laundry, cooking dinner. When the children came home from school, she tried to be her usual self, attentive, caring, asking about their day at school. But her mind was far away. In the evening, after putting the younger children to bed, Nia went down to the kitchen and found Kendra doing her homework. "Is Dad back yet?" her daughter asked, without looking up from her biology textbook. "No, he has an important presentation today," Nia replied, pouring herself some tea. Kendra looked up. "He's been staying late a lot lately." Nia froze, her cup halfway to her mouth. "He has a lot of work," she said after a pause. "The fiscal quarter is coming to an end." Kendra clearly wanted to say something else, but changed her mind and returned to her textbook. This brief exchange made Nia wonder, were the changes so noticeable that even her daughter had noticed them? She had always been proud that her marriage to Leonard was an example for their children. Love, respect, partnership. Now something was changing, something intangible. The phone calls he ended when she entered the room, late nights, business trips that had become more frequent, his distraction when she talked about family plans. 3 days later, she had a chance to get some answers. It was the annual charity evening in support of the public library, where Leonard was on the board of trustees. They always attended together. Nia chose a dark blue dress for the evening that flattered her figure, which she had maintained after 3 children thanks to regular exercise. She spent more time than usual on her makeup and styled her dreadlocks into an elegant bun. When she and Leonard entered the city library, which had been decorated for the occasion, many heads turned in their direction. They really were a beautiful couple. Leonard looked like a Hollywood star in his tuxedo, and Nia held his arm proudly. "Leonard! Finally!" A gray-haired man, the chairman of the board of trustees, approached them. "And the lovely Nia, you look charming today." "Thank you, Mr. Greenwood," Nia smiled. "Leonard, I need to have a quick word with you about the presentation," Greenwood said. "Nia, would you mind if I stole your husband for 5 minutes?" "Of course not," she replied. "I'll get something to drink." Left alone, Nia headed for the bar. Taking a glass of champagne, she slowly scanned the room, recognizing familiar faces of the city's elite. Then her gaze stopped. Standing against the far wall was a young woman, tall, slender, with perfect posture and dark chocolate skin. Her short silver dress was on the edge of propriety for such an event, but she wore it with such confidence that no one dared to comment. Her hair was straight and smooth, falling to her shoulders. She was not classically beautiful, but she had that elusive attractiveness that makes men turn their heads. But that wasn't what caught Nia's attention. It was the way this woman was looking across the room, at someone, with an expression that could not be interpreted in any other way. Nia followed her gaze and saw her husband. Leonard was talking to Greenwood, but his eyes kept returning to the woman in silver, and there was the same expression on his face. Nia knew that expression. Once, many years ago, he had looked at her that way. "Are you from around here?" a voice asked beside her. Nia turned and saw an elderly woman with a martini glass. "Yes, my husband and I live in Shaker Heights," Nia replied automatically, trying to cope with the sudden weakness in her knees. "It's a wonderful neighborhood." "I'm Margaret Hollis, by the way. I teach English literature at the college. Nia Parker, pleased to meet you. And your husband?" "Leonard Parker. He's a financial advisor at Brighton Investments." Margaret's eyes lit up with recognition. "Oh, I saw his name in the program. One of the sponsors. A big contributor this year." "Yes, he's very involved in charity work," Nia said, struggling to keep the conversation going, watching out of the corner of her eye as Leonard finished talking to Greenwood and now stood a few steps away from the woman in silver. They didn't talk, didn't even look directly at each other. But there was clearly a connection between them, as if an invisible thread stretched across the room. "And that young lady in silver," Nia couldn't help herself. "Do you know her?" Margaret looked in the direction she was pointing. "Oh, that must be Zora Banks. She's new in town, working in finance. I think she's at Brighton too, very ambitious from what I've heard." Zora Banks. The name burned itself into Nia's memory. "Interesting," she muttered, taking a sip of champagne. The evening dragged on endlessly. Nia smiled, made small talk, applauded the speakers, but her inner radar was tuned in to only 2 people in the room. She noticed every glance, every movement, how they accidentally ended up next to the snack table, how their hands touched for a moment as they passed a glass, how they briefly disappeared from the room, first Zora, then, 5 minutes later, Leonard, and how they returned separately 10 minutes later. Nia noticed everything. At home in her bedroom, while Leonard was taking a shower, Nia lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The face of Zora Banks stood before her eyes. Confident, bold, young. 28? Maybe 30? 8 years younger than her. A colleague, working with her husband every day. Beautiful, free, without 3 children and stretch marks on her stomach. That night, Nia had her first nightmare, one that would repeat itself over and over again. She was standing on the edge of a cliff, her 3 children behind her. Below, on the beach, Leonard and Zora were holding hands and calling her to jump, but she knew that if she jumped, her children would be left alone on the cliff. Nia woke up in a cold sweat. Leonard was sleeping next to her, his breathing steady and calm. He had no idea that the storm had already begun. The next 2 weeks turned into agonizing anticipation for Nia. She looked for evidence, signs, confirmation. She checked the pockets of his suits and looked through his credit card statements. The only thing she found was another bill from a restaurant where they had never been together. When Leonard announced on Wednesday that he had a business dinner with clients that evening, Nia made up her mind. Waiting for him to leave, she called her sister. "Imani, I need your help. Can you watch the kids tonight?" "Sure, sis. Is something wrong?" "No, just a PTA meeting. It came up." Imani agreed to come, and an hour later, Nia was sitting in her Ford 2 blocks away from Brighton Investments. Her heart was pounding, her palms were sweaty. She had never done anything like this before and felt like the heroine of a cheap detective novel. But her fear of the unknown was stronger than her shame. At 7 o'clock in the evening, the doors of the building opened and employees began to file out, tired and rushing home after a long day at work. Nia stared intently at the faces, afraid of missing him. And there he was, Leonard, in his gray suit, carrying a briefcase. He didn't go to the parking lot, but headed down the street to where several restaurants and bars were located. Nia waited a minute and followed him, keeping her distance. Leonard turned the corner, walked another block, and stopped at the entrance to the Blue Moon, a trendy live music venue popular with business people. He glanced at his watch, clearly waiting for someone. Nia parked across the street and watched. 10 minutes later, a taxi pulled up to the bar and Zora Banks got out. Even from a distance, Nia recognized her. The same smooth hair, the same confident gait. This time she was wearing a business suit, a narrow knee-length skirt and a low-cut blouse. Leonard perked up noticeably when she appeared. They exchanged greetings, formal, without hugs or kisses, but Nia saw how his face changed. Then they went into the bar together. Nia sat in her car, unable to move. Maybe it really was a business meeting. Maybe there were other colleagues or clients inside. Maybe she was wrong, but her intuition screamed otherwise. About an hour passed. Nia checked her phone for messages from her children and sister. Everything was fine at home. But here? What was happening behind the doors of the Blue Moon? The bar door opened and they came out, together, but not side by side. Zora was saying something, gesturing animatedly, while Leonard listened with a smile. They walked down the street, and Nia, acting on impulse, got out of the car and followed them, keeping in the shadows. They walked 2 blocks and turned toward the Riverview residential complex, a new building with expensive apartments. Zora took out her keys, opened the front door, and they went inside. Nia stopped, feeling the world around her spin. A business meeting? At Zora's apartment? At 8 in the evening? She slowly returned to her car. It was quiet and empty inside, just like her soul at that moment. Nia knew she should go home. Her children and sister were waiting for her. But instead, she just sat there, staring at the glowing windows of Riverview and trying to piece together the fragments of her shattered reality. 2 hours later, when Leonard came out of the building and hailed a taxi, Nia finally started the engine and drove home. Now she had no doubts. Her husband was seeing another woman, young, beautiful, ambitious, and something told Nia that the expensive sapphire ring wasn't his only gift. After that night, Nia's sleep became fitful and restless. She woke up several times, listening to her husband's steady breathing next to her, and wondered, who was he thinking about before falling asleep? About her or about Zora Banks? The morning began with a headache and a heaviness in her chest that neither coffee nor attempts to focus on everyday tasks could dispel. Leonard continued to come home late, no longer hiding behind the excuse of business meetings. "I need to work," he would say, and Nia would nod, pretending to believe him. Outwardly, their life went on as usual. Breakfast together, conversations about the children, discussing bills and plans for the weekend. But inside, something in Nia had broken, and with each passing day, the crack grew wider. She needed proof. Not to convince herself, she already knew the truth, but to expose him, to make him admit it. On Saturday evening, her chance came. They were home alone. The children had gone to their grandmother's for the weekend. Leonard took a shower and left his phone on the bedside table before going downstairs to prepare dinner. This was unusual. He was usually glued to his phone, but today, perhaps, he had let his guard down. Nia glanced at the screen. The phone was locked, requiring a password. She tried several options: his birthday, their anniversary, a combination of significant dates. Nothing worked. Then she remembered. Their first date was at the Four Seasons restaurant on April 22nd. She dialed 422. The screen unlocked. Her heart was beating so loudly that she thought Leonard could hear it from the kitchen. Her hands were shaking as she opened the Messenger app. Among her recent contacts were several clients: his mother, his brother, and Zora B. Nia tapped on the contact. The messages were in reverse order, from the most recent to the oldest. The most recent one was from that morning. "I can't wait for tomorrow. Finally, we can spend the whole day together." Leonard's reply: "Me too. I'll tell Nia I'm going fishing with Marcus." Nia continued scrolling up the conversation, each message like a stab in the heart. They discussed the restaurant they had been to last week. They planned a trip to Lake Erie. They exchanged phrases that only the two of them understood. Zora: "Henderson almost noticed you looking at me during the meeting today." Leonard: "I can't help it. You looked so beautiful in that blouse." Zora: "Wait until you see what I'm wearing." Nia felt nausea rising in her throat, but she couldn't stop. She continued to scroll, sinking deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole of their correspondence. And then she saw it. A message from Zora dated 3 weeks ago. "The test is positive. I'm pregnant." The room swam before her eyes. Nia grabbed the edge of the bed to keep from falling. Pregnant. Zora Banks was pregnant with her husband's child. She read Leonard's reply through the fog in her eyes. "We'll get through this, my love. It's a sign. Now I have to tell Nia everything and leave." It got worse. They discussed how and when Leonard would tell her about the divorce, how they would start a new life together, how Zora would quit her job when the baby was born. Zora: "I found a great house in San Diego. 3 bedrooms, a pool, a school nearby." Leonard: "Sounds perfect. It'll be great for you, me, and the baby." San Diego, on the other side of the country. He wasn't just planning to leave her. He was planning to move so far away that he would only be able to see the children occasionally. Nia heard footsteps on the stairs and quickly put the phone back where it was. When Leonard entered the bedroom, she was standing by the window, staring blankly out at the street. "Dinner's almost ready," he said. "I made your favorite steak." Nia didn't turn around. She couldn't look him in the eye. Not now. "I don't feel well," she said quietly. "I think I'll eat later." "What's wrong?" His voice sounded concerned, but it seemed so fake to her that she wanted to scream. "Just a migraine. Go on, don't wait for me." Leonard hesitated, but then left, closing the door behind him. As soon as his footsteps faded, Nia slid down the wall to the floor, wrapping her arms around her knees. Something inside her had finally broken. That night, for the first time, she took a bottle of wine from the kitchen cupboard and drank it alone, sitting in the dark living room while Leonard slept upstairs. The alcohol dulled the pain, but it couldn't drown out her thoughts. They swirled around her head like vultures: pregnant, San Diego, a new life, divorce, children without a father, her, an abandoned wife, betrayed, replaced, unwanted. Kendra was the first to notice the changes. On Sunday evening, when the children returned from their grandmother's, she found her mother in the kitchen with a glass of wine, even though it was only 4 o'clock in the afternoon. "Mom?" Concern was evident in her eyes. "Are you okay?" "Of course, sweetie." Nia tried to smile, but it came out unconvincing. "Just a little tired." "Where's Dad?" "He's fishing with Marcus. He'll be back late." Kendra frowned. "That's strange. I thought Uncle Marcus was in Chicago for a conference. Aunt Letitia wrote about it on Instagram yesterday." Nia froze with the glass at her lips. Leonard hadn't even bothered to check if his friend was actually in town before using him as a cover for a date with his mistress. "I must have gotten something mixed up," she said, putting down her wine and turning her attention to dinner, feeling her daughter's watchful gaze on her. The next week passed in a blur. Nia functioned on autopilot, cooking, cleaning, helping the younger children with their homework. But inside, a hurricane was raging. She eavesdropped on her husband's phone calls, checked his pockets, monitored his credit card expenses. She had turned into a detective investigating the collapse of her own marriage. On Friday, when Leonard said he would be late from work, she couldn't take it anymore. "Don't lie to me," she said quietly. "You're going to see her." Leonard froze at the door, his back to her. For a moment, the room was so silent you could have cut it with a knife. "Nia," he began, turning slowly. "I didn't—" "Don't you dare deny it!" Her voice trembled, but she managed to control herself. "I know everything! About Zora, about the baby, about San Diego!" Leonard's face changed. Now there was no surprise or remorse on it, only exhaustion and something like relief. "I was going to tell you," he said. "Not like this, of course, but I was going to." "When? After you bought the tickets to California?" He shook his head. "It's complicated, Nia. It's very complicated." "What exactly is complicated?" She felt anger rising inside her. "Explain to me what's so complicated about being a faithful husband and father. What's so complicated about keeping the vows you made 18 years ago?" Leonard walked over to the sofa and sank heavily onto it, covering his face with his hands. "I didn't plan this," he said hoarsely. "I swear I wasn't looking for an affair. It just happened. We were working late on a project. Then we started having lunch together. She understands my work, my ambitions. She makes me feel young and free." "And with me?" Nia stood in front of him, crossing her arms over her chest so he couldn't see them shaking. "With me, you feel old and tied down?" "No." He looked up. "With you, I feel responsible. For the children, for the house, for the bills. Sometimes it weighs so heavily that I can't breathe. And you decided to run away, to abandon us." Leonard was silent, and his silence spoke louder than any confession. "She's pregnant, Nia," he said finally. 4 months. I can't leave her now. But what about us? Me, Kendra, Jamal, Layla? Can you leave us? The kids are almost grown up." "Layla is 8 years old. I'll help out financially, of course, and visit when I can." Nia laughed, a bitter, unnatural laugh. "You've made up your mind, haven't you? You've got it all planned out. A new young wife, a new baby, a new city. And we're just an obligation, an item on your expense list." Leonard stood up, approached her, and tried to take her hand, but she pulled it away. "Nia, please. I know this is hard. But maybe it'll be better for everyone. We're not the same people we used to be. We live like neighbors, not like husband and wife." "And whose fault is that?" She looked him straight in the eye. "Who started coming home after midnight? Who stopped caring about my life, my thoughts? Who chose to spend their evenings with a colleague instead of their family?" Leonard looked away. "I need to think," he said after a pause. "We both need to think. This shouldn't turn into a war, Nia. Not for the sake of the children. You should have thought about the children before you started an affair." "It's not an affair," his voice hardened. "I love her." Those 3 words hit harder than a slap. Nia recoiled as if he had actually hit her. "Go," she whispered. "Just go." Leonard hesitated, then picked up his coat and left, closing the door quietly behind him. Nia sank down onto the sofa, feeling a dull ache growing inside her. They didn't shout. The children might hear. It all happened quietly, almost mundane. 18 years of marriage ended not with an explosion, but with a sigh. She didn't cry. The tears had dried before she found out about Zora's pregnancy. Now there was only emptiness and a strange calm inside her. She knew what she had to do. It took her 3 glasses of wine to work up the courage. It was almost 11 o'clock when she called a taxi. The children were asleep. No one would look for her until morning. "Riverview Complex," she told the driver. The ride took 15 minutes. Nia looked out the window at Cleveland at night, the lights, the signs, the occasional passerby. It was a normal Friday for everyone except her. The taxi stopped at a modern glass and concrete building. Nia paid and got out, tilting her head back to see the upper floors. Somewhere up there, in one of those windows, her husband and his mistress were planning a future that had no place for her. The front door was locked. A code or key was required. Nia didn't know Zora's apartment number, but fate played into her hands. An elderly woman with a dog came out of the building. Nia smiled at her and slipped inside before the door closed. She looked around the lobby. There was a board on the wall with the names of the residents and their apartment numbers. Banks Z, apartment 312, third floor. The elevator silently took her to the right floor. The hallway was empty, and the dim lighting created an almost intimate atmosphere. Nia walked along, reading the numbers on the doors until she found the right one. 312. She stood there for a few seconds, gathering her thoughts. What would she say? Give me back my husband? Leave our family alone? How could you? Nia raised her hand and knocked decisively. She heard footsteps from inside. Then the door opened. Zora Banks looked exactly the same as she had at the charity ball. Confident, beautiful, with a slight smile that disappeared as soon as she saw who was standing in front of her. Mrs. Parker, she said, quickly regaining her composure. What a surprise. Nia noticed that Zora was dressed in casual clothes, a loose-fitting t-shirt and leggings. The t-shirt didn't hide her slightly rounded belly. 4 months, Nia remembered Leonard's words. Can I come in? Nia asked, surprised at how calm her voice sounded. Zora hesitated only for a moment, then stepped aside to let her in. Leonard isn't here if you're looking for him, she said, closing the door. The apartment was spacious and stylish. Minimalist furniture, neutral tones, large windows overlooking the river. There were documents on the coffee table, next to a half-empty glass of wine. Nia noted this to herself, wine in her position. I came to talk to you, Nia said, turning to Zora. About my husband, about my family. Zora crossed her arms over her stomach, protecting it. I think you'd better discuss this with Leonard. We've already discussed it. Now I want to hear your side of the story. Zora sighed and gestured for Nia to sit down. She remained standing. What exactly do you want to know, Mrs. Parker? Nia, my name is Nia. Since you're sleeping with my husband and carrying his child, let's skip the formalities. Zora didn't flinch. All right, Nia. What do you want to hear? Why? That question tormented her the most. Why him? A young, beautiful woman like you could have had anyone. Why destroy a family? Zora sank into the chair, suddenly looking tired. I didn't plan to fall in love with a married man, she said. But Leonard, he's special, smart, caring, ambitious. We understand each other without words. 18 years, Nia said quietly. We've been together for 18 years. We have 3 children. Doesn't that mean anything? To me? Zora looked her straight in the eye. No. I'm sorry you're hurt, but I won't apologize for my feelings. Leonard has been unhappy in your marriage for a long time. He stayed out of a sense of duty, not love. Her words hit home, each one like a knife. You don't know anything about our marriage, said Nia. Nothing about our relationship, about our history. I know enough, replied Zora. I know that he wakes up with a smile when we're together. I know that with you he feels trapped. I know that when he talks about the future, he sees me there, not you. Nia felt something inside her break completely. What about his children? Are they part of that future too? Of course, Zora said, placing her hand on her stomach. He'll be a wonderful father to our child, and he'll still be a father to your children, just from a distance. From a distance of 2,000 miles, from San Diego? Zora raised an eyebrow. You're well informed. I'm his wife. I've been his wife for almost 2 decades. Zora stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the city lights. Listen, Nia, I understand you came here hoping I would give up Leonard, that I would be moved and decide not to destroy your perfect family. But that's not going to happen. I love him. He loves me. We're expecting a child, and we're going to be together, whether you like it or not. Even if it breaks the hearts of 3 children, children adapt. Zora turned to her. They'll understand when they're older, and they'll be happy for their father that he's finally found true happiness. Nia took a step forward, closing the distance between them. Do you really believe that? That you can just erase 18 years of your life? Replace one family with another like an old model of phone with a new one? Don't be dramatic. Zora rolled her eyes. No one is erasing anyone. Life just changes. People change. Feelings change too. What if I don't give him a divorce? Zora smiled. What century are you living in? Divorce is easy to get these days, especially with a good lawyer, and Leonard has a very good lawyer. Have you already discussed this, divorce? Of course. We've discussed everything. The house we're going to buy, school for the child, how much alimony he'll pay you. Nia felt the room start to spin. They had planned everything down to the last detail while she was still unaware. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked hoarsely. "Because you came here for the truth," Zora replied, "and I'm giving it to you without embellishment. Leonard is leaving you for a better life with me." Something in her tone, in her smug smile, in her condescending gaze finally broke Nia. "You," she began, feeling rage rising inside her. "You destroyed everything we've built over the years, everything I had, and you stand here and tell me I should just accept it, smile and wish you happiness?" "Well, that would be the mature thing to do," Zora shrugged. "But I don't expect that from a woman who couldn't keep her own husband." That was the last straw. Nia moved forward, unaware of her actions, driven only by blind rage. Zora stepped back, her confidence replaced by anxiety. "What are you doing?" she asked, her back against the wall. "You'd better leave. After everything you've said? After you stole my life?" "I didn't steal anything!" Zora's voice trembled. "He chose me!" Nia looked around for something to grab. Her gaze fell on a heavy marble statuette on the table nearby, an abstract figure resembling a wave. She grabbed it, feeling its cool weight in her hand. "Put that down," Zora tried to speak calmly, but fear was already showing in her eyes. "You don't want to do something you'll regret." "What will I regret?" Nia's voice sounded strange, as if it didn't belong to her. "Losing your husband, your home, your future? It's too late for regrets." "Think about your children." Zora raised her hands in a protective gesture. "They need you." "And your child?" Nia pointed the figurine at Zora's stomach. "He needs his mother too." "But you didn't think about that when you destroyed my family." "Listen," Zora took a step to the side, trying to get around Nia. "Let's just calm down. Let's talk like adults." "We already talked," Nia said. "And you know what? You're right. Leonard deserves better. My children deserve better. And so do I." She took a step forward, raising the statuette. Zora flinched, trying to dodge it, but it was too late. The heavy marble came crashing down on her head with a dull thud. Zora fell without a sound. Nia froze, staring at her, a young woman sprawled on the floor of an expensive apartment. Blood oozed from the wound on her temple, dark against the light carpet. The marble statuette fell from Nia's hands and rolled across the floor with a dull thud. The sound snapped her out of her stupor. She knelt down next to Zora, feeling for a pulse in her neck. Nothing. She put her ear to her chest. Silence. Zora Banks was dead. Nia recoiled, pressing her hand to her mouth. What had she done? She had killed a person, a pregnant woman. She was a murderer. Panic washed over her. She looked around the room, realizing how many clues she had left behind. Her fingerprints on the doorknob, on the figurine. The neighbors might have seen her. The cameras in the lobby. The taxi driver who brought her here. She had to fix this. Cover her tracks, run. With trembling hands, Nia took tissues out of her purse and began wiping everything she had touched. The door handles, the figurine, the table. She didn't know if it would help, but the action gave her the illusion of control in a situation that was completely out of control. When she was done, she took one last look at Zora Banks, the woman who wanted to take her husband away. Zora Banks's body was discovered by the concierge of the Riverview complex early Monday morning. Alarmed that the young woman had not picked up her Sunday mail and was not answering her phone, she used her service key. What she saw caused her to run out of the apartment screaming. Detective Isaiah Freeman arrived at the scene 40 minutes after the call. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a short, graying beard and alert eyes, he commanded respect with his mere presence. In his 20 years with the Cleveland Police Department, he had seen a lot, but every new murder still left a heavy mark. "What do we have here?" he asked the patrol officer, pulling on latex gloves. "Zora Banks, 28 years old, financial analyst. Blunt force trauma to the head, presumably with this statuette." The officer pointed to a marble figure in a plastic evidence bag. "Time of death is approximately between 9 p.m. Friday and midnight Saturday." Freeman nodded and entered the apartment, where forensic technicians were already working, collecting evidence. The body was still where it had been found, on the living room floor, near the coffee table. The blood from the wound on her temple had dried, forming a dark crust. "Any signs of a struggle?" Freeman asked the medical examiner leaning over the body. "Minimal. No defensive wounds. It looks like she didn't expect an attack or knew her attacker and didn't perceive him as a threat." Freeman glanced around the apartment. Expensive, stylish, immaculately clean. There were no signs of a robbery or forced entry. "Is anything missing?" "The concierge says that as far as she can tell, nothing of value has been taken. Wallet, jewelry, electronics, everything is here." "So it's not a robbery," Freeman muttered. "Personal motives." He noticed a stack of documents on the table and a glass with the remains of wine. "Check the glass for fingerprints and DNA," he ordered. "And I want to know what's in those papers." One of the crime scene investigators, a middle-aged woman, approached him. "Detective, you should see this," she said, pointing to an open diary on the table. "There's an entry in the calendar for Saturday, Leon, picnic, lake." "Leon? The guy?" "Possibly." "And another thing." She paused. "The victim was pregnant, about 4 months." Freeman raised an eyebrow. "Really? Check her phone, find this Leon, and contact her employer. We need a list of colleagues to interview." Freeman spent the next few hours analyzing the crime scene and compiling a preliminary report. From talking to the concierge, he learned that Zora had lived at Riverview for about a year, was a quiet neighbor, didn't throw parties, but sometimes a man would come to visit her. Tall, well-dressed, around 40. By Sunday evening, the detective had his first lead, the name Leonard Parker, senior financial advisor at Brighton Investments, where Zora worked. Their correspondence on the victim's phone left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. On Monday morning, Freeman showed up at the Brighton Investments office, a glass skyscraper in downtown Cleveland. "I need to talk to Leonard Parker," he said to the receptionist, showing his badge. The young woman became nervous. "Mr. Parker isn't in today. He called and said he wasn't feeling well. Give me his home address." An hour later, Detective Freeman was ringing the doorbell at the Parkers' home in Shaker Heights. The door was opened by a woman, slender, with short dreadlocks pulled back into an elegant bun, wearing a simple house dress. "Mrs. Parker?" asked Freeman. "Detective Isaiah Freeman, Cleveland Police Department. I need to talk to your husband." Nia Parker looked surprised but quickly regained her composure. "Leonard left early this morning. He said he had to go to the office." "But he's not at the office," Freeman noted. "He called in sick." A shadow crossed the woman's face. "That's strange. Maybe he has a meeting with a client? I can call him if you like." "Please do." Nia took out her phone and dialed the number. After several rings, she shook her head. "No answer." "What's going on, detective? Why are you looking for my husband?" Freeman looked at her intently. "Mrs. Parker, do you know a woman named Zora Banks?" Nia froze for a moment, but the detective noticed the pause. "I believe she's a colleague of Leonard's. I saw her at a charity event at the library a couple of weeks ago. Why?" "Miss Banks was found dead in her apartment yesterday morning. Murder." Nia covered her mouth with her hand. "My God, that's terrible." "Yes," Freeman agreed, keeping his eyes on her. "And it appears your husband was very close to her." Nia lowered her eyes. I don't know what you're talking about. Mrs. Parker, we understand that your husband and Miss Banks were romantically involved, and that she was pregnant." Nia swayed, grabbing the doorframe. I need to sit down." Freeman followed her into the living room, noting the immaculate order of the house. Nia sank onto the sofa, folding her hands in her lap. "When was the last time you saw your husband?" the detective asked. "This morning before he left for work." "And before that?" "We were home all weekend, with the kids." "All weekend? He didn't go anywhere?" Nia hesitated. "He came home late on Friday night. He said he was with colleagues." "What time exactly?" "Around 2 in the morning." Freeman made a note in his notebook. "Mrs. Parker, did you know about your husband's affair?" Nia swallowed. "I suspected, but I wasn't sure until—" She trailed off. Until you came," she finished quickly. "Now it all makes sense." Freeman studied her face. Something didn't add up, but he couldn't figure out what. "If your husband contacts you, please ask him to call me immediately," he said, handing her his business card. "This is very important." Nia nodded, taking the card with trembling fingers. When the detective left, Nia rushed to the phone and dialed her husband's number again. This time he answered. "Where are you?" she asked, trying to sound calm. "At a motel on the outskirts of town." Leonard's voice sounded hoarse, as if he hadn't slept in days. "I couldn't go home after what happened. The police are looking for you. They know about your relationship with Zora." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I'm coming home," Leonard finally said. "We need to talk." An hour later, Leonard was sitting in his living room across from his wife. He looked haggard, his eyes red from lack of sleep and stubble on his chin. "I found her," he said quietly. "On Saturday morning, we agreed to meet at the lake, but she didn't show up. She didn't answer her phone. I drove to her house and..." His voice faltered. "She was lying there on the floor. I tried to help, but it was too late." "Did you call the police?" Nia asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Leonard shook his head. "I panicked. I thought I'd be blamed. A husband, an affair, the perfect suspect. I just ran away." "What are you going to do now?" "Turn myself in. Tell them everything. I have an alibi for the time of the murder. I was at a bar with Marcus until 1 a.m. There are camera recordings. But I needed time to think." Nia looked at her husband, broken, lost. She should have felt satisfaction at his suffering, but inside she felt only emptiness. "The detective left his number," she said, handing him the card. Leonard took it and stood up. "I need to clean myself up before I meet with the police." When he went upstairs, Nia remained seated, staring into space. Everything that had happened seemed unreal, like a nightmare from which she couldn't wake up. 3 hours later, Leonard returned from the interrogation. His face was gray with exhaustion. "They checked my alibi," he said, sinking into a chair. "The camera footage confirms that I was at the bar with Marcus until 1 a.m. Zora's time of death was between 9 p.m. and midnight. They haven't completely cleared me yet, but I'm no longer the prime suspect." Nia nodded, unable to speak. "Tomorrow they'll continue interviewing Zora's colleagues and looking for other suspects," Leonard continued. "The detective said they'll find whoever did this." Nia felt a chill run down her spine. That evening, Kendra noticed her mother's strange behavior. Usually calm and collected, Nia now flinched at every sound, broke 2 cups while trying to make tea, and failed to hear several questions directed at her. "Mom, what's wrong?" Kendra asked when they were alone in the kitchen. "You're not yourself." "I'm just tired, sweetie," Nia replied, avoiding her eyes. "Is it because of that woman? Dad's colleague who was killed?" Nia looked up sharply. "Who told you?" "I heard you talking to Dad. And I saw the police officer who came this morning." Nia sighed. "Yes, it's shocking news. We're all in shock." "Did you know Dad had something going on with her?" Kendra asked bluntly. Nia looked at her daughter, who was so young and yet so perceptive. "Let's not talk about that now, Kendra. These are adult problems." "I'm 16, Mom. I'm not a child anymore." "You'll always be a child to me." Nia tried to smile, but it came out unconvincing. "Go do your homework. Everything will be fine, I promise." Kendra left, but Nia could see that her daughter didn't believe her. How could she? Nothing would ever be the same again. Never. The next day, Detective Freeman showed up again, this time to interview the victim's neighbors. Nia froze when she saw the police car outside their house. "Detective," she said, opening the door. "How can I help you?" "Mrs. Parker," Freeman nodded. "We're interviewing everyone who might have seen anything on the night of the murder. Miss Banks lived nearby at River View." "Yes, I know." Nia stepped back, letting him into the house. "But I didn't see anything, Detective. I was home with the kids all evening." "On Friday, right? Your husband said he came home around 2 in the morning. Were you awake waiting for him?" "No, I went to bed early. I was tired." "I see." Freeman took out his notebook. "Did you go out anywhere that evening?" Nia felt her heart skip a beat. "No, of course not. I told you I was home with the kids." "All the kids were home?" "Yes, no. Kendra was sleeping over at a friend's house, but the younger ones were home. How old are they? Jamal is 11, Layla is 8. And you left them home alone? Freeman raised an eyebrow. Nia clenched her fists. No, I didn't. She stopped, realizing the trap. My sister came over, Imani. She was with the kids. I see. Freeman made a note in his notebook. Can I talk to your sister? She left. To a conference. In Chicago. When will she be back? In a week, Nia lied, feeling cold sweat trickle down her back. Freeman looked at her with a long, searching gaze that made her want to sink through the floor. Mrs. Parker, are you hiding something from me? No, she replied too quickly. What makes you think that? Just a feeling. 20 years on the police force develops intuition. Detective, Nia took a deep breath. I just found out that my husband was cheating on me, that his mistress is pregnant, and that she's been murdered. I'm sorry if I seem nervous or distracted. Freeman nodded. I understand. One more question. Have you ever been to Miss Banks' apartment? No, never, Nia replied, trying not to look away. All right, the detective closed his notebook. If you remember anything important, call me. He handed her his business card again, even though he had already left one yesterday. When the detective closed the door behind him, Nia leaned against the wall, feeling her legs buckle. He suspects something. She saw it in his eyes, heard it in his questions. But he had no proof. He couldn't have. That same evening, Kendra began her own little investigation. She had noticed strange behavior in her mother, even before the police started coming to their house. Now, with new information, the puzzle was starting to come together. On Friday evening, when Kendra returned home from her friend's house earlier than planned, her mother was not there. Aunt Imani said that Nia had an urgent parent-teacher meeting. But the next day, when Kendra asked her mother about the meeting, she looked confused and quickly changed the subject. Now Kendra sat in her room, analyzing everything she knew. Her father had been cheating on her mother with a colleague. That woman had been killed on Friday evening when her mother was away from home. Her mother had been acting strangely and seemed nervous when talking to the police. Kendra decided to test her theory. She waited until her parents went to bed and sneaked into the laundry room. There, in the basket of dirty laundry, she found what she was looking for. Her mother's dress, the one she had worn on Friday. There was an almost invisible dark spot on the hem. Kendra held the fabric up to the light. The stain looked like blood. The next step was her mother's purse. Kendra knew it was an invasion of privacy, but she couldn't stop herself. In the side pocket, she found a taxi receipt from their house to the Riverview complex, dated Friday at 9:30 p.m. Kendra felt a chill run through her body. Her mother had been there, in her father's mistress's apartment, on the night of the murder. In the morning, after Leonard left for work and the younger children went to school, Kendra stayed home, saying she was sick. She waited for her mother to finish cleaning and come downstairs. Nia looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes, as if she hadn't slept for several nights. Mom, Kendra began when they were alone in the kitchen. I know you were at Riverview on Friday night. Nia froze, her coffee cup halfway to her mouth. What are you talking about? I found a taxi receipt, Kendra said, trying to keep her voice steady, and a bloodstain on your dress. The cup slipped from Nia's hands and shattered on the floor, splattering coffee across the tile. It's not what you think, Nia whispered. What am I supposed to think? Kendra raised her voice. You lied about where you were. You lied to the police. What happened in that apartment, Mom? Nia slowly sank into a chair, as if her legs had given way beneath her. I didn't mean to, she said so quietly that Kendra could barely hear her. I swear, I didn't plan any of this. I just wanted to talk to her, to make her leave our family alone. And what happened? She was so confident. She told me how she and your father were planning a new life, how he was going to leave us and move to San Diego with her, how she was going to have his baby, and they'd be happy. Kendra listened, her eyes wide. And you hit her? Nia nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I don't remember how it happened. All I remember is grabbing the figurine from the table and... She covered her face with her hands. Oh my God, Kendra, what have I done? Kendra stood frozen, unable to move. Her mother was a murderer. the woman who had taught her to always do the right thing, to be honest and kind. That same woman had taken another person's life. "You have to tell the police," Kendra said finally. "Detective Freeman." "I can't." Nia lifted her tear-stained face. "They'll put me in jail. What will happen to you? To Jamal and Layla? What will happen if they catch you? If they find the evidence? Do you think I'm the only one who can find it?" Nia shook her head. "I was so scared, Kendra. I didn't understand." "Mom," Kendra approached and took her hands. "I love you, but you have to do what you always taught us to do. Admit your mistake and accept the consequences." At that moment, there was a knock at the door. Nia flinched, and Kendra looked out the window. "It's Detective Freeman," she said. "Don't open it," Nia pleaded. "Please give me time to think." But Kendra was already walking toward the door. She knew what she had to do, no matter how painful it was. Detective Freeman stood in the doorway, looking more serious than usual. "Good morning," he said. "Is your mother home?" "Yes," Kendra replied, stepping aside to let him in. "She's in the kitchen." Nia sat at the table, her back straight, as if preparing for the inevitable. When Freeman entered, she looked up at him. "You know, don't you?" she asked. Freeman nodded. "The neighbor across the street from Riverview was walking her dog that night. She saw you enter the building around 10 o'clock, and you left around 11. We also have footage from the taxi you called, and your fingerprints are on the door handle of the apartment." Nia closed her eyes. "I didn't want to kill her," she said quietly. "I just wanted to talk." "Mom," Kendra stepped forward, but Freeman stopped her with a gesture. "Nia Parker," he said in an official tone, "you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Zora Banks. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say may be used against you in court. You have the right to an attorney." Kendra watched as the detective cuffed her mother's wrists. Nia didn't resist. She looked almost relieved, as if the weight of the secret was worse than the consequences of its revelation. "Take care of your brother and sister," Nia said to her daughter as Freeman led her to the door. "And tell your father, tell him I'm sorry, not for what I did, but for what we lost." As the police car drove away from the house, Kendra stood on the doorstep, feeling the world around her crumble. Detective Freeman drove in silence, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror at his passenger. Nia Parker sat motionless, staring out the window at the streets of the city where she had lived her entire life. Freeman thought about what had happened. An ordinary woman, a loving mother, an exemplary wife, turned into a murderer because of her husband's betrayal. The love that should have given her strength and support turned into destructive rage. He remembered the words of his first mentor. "The most terrible crimes are not committed out of hatred, but out of love that has been reborn into something dark." How often had he seen proof of this in his career? And now again, a tragedy that could have been avoided if people had been more honest with each other, kinder, more attentive. 3 lives destroyed. Zora is dead. Nia is going to prison. Leonard has lost his mistress, his wife, and his unborn child. And 3 more children who will now grow up knowing that their mother is a murderer. All because of love that turned into poison.